Welcome everyone to Your Our Unity, a show that wishes to spread a spirit of peace and love in the world, one conversation at a time.
None of that affects how you are going to change the world.
That's right.
No, it does not take one person to change the world, but it takes one person to believe in themselves.
Yes.
That they can make a difference.
I love
to
that.
Inspire others.
And that's why, for me, I try to make it my purpose now to try to help other people realize their self-worth.
Yeah.
Because it's so sad that so many of us, we get destroyed based off of what other people have to say.
Yeah.
I would say do it in your own way. Make sure you're doing it on your own accord and take a risk.
Go out there and live your life passionately. Believe in everything that you're doing and believe in the fact that you will accomplish every single goal. Welcome everyone to Your Our Unity, a show that wishes to spread a spirit of peace and love in the world, one conversation at a time. We want to encourage you to empower the minds of our youth. During this social and economical and cultural, political climate right now, it is so important that we create spaces for our children to be able to express themselves, for them to be creative, for them to use their voices, for them to see and know that we see them, we care for them, and that we hear them. It is so important right now that we allow them to be who they are, to meet them where they are, and just uplift them and empower them in any way that we possibly can. Let's not just tell them what to think and what to do. Let's actually show them how to do it and how to think. I am your host, LaShawn Walker. I'd like to welcome you in. Please like, share, and follow. Let everyone know that we are on right now. Tag a friend. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'd like to welcome you all into another fabulous episode. I hope that you're having a wonderful day. Oh my God, it is the start of the summer, my friends. It is done. It is done. Everybody is getting on planes and putting on bathing suits. I'm getting bitten by mosquitoes. I don't know what's going on, but it is a beautiful time to celebrate and enjoy this summer season. I hope that you're out there doing something fabulous and amazing. Last week, I noticed on my social media feed that so many kids were graduating or elevating in their grades. It was so beautiful to see just the joy on their faces, allowing them to just, experience an accomplishment that they were so proud of. It was beautiful seeing their faces just smiling. And more importantly, their parents. I noticed that I saw a lot of proud parents that realized that all that they've poured into them, all that they've showed them, all that they sacrificed for them was now also realized. That they were fast tracking into fulfilling their dreams. So many kids on Sunday when I went to church, they were recognized by a bishop, Bishop Wilson at Kingdom Ambassador. And she brought up all the students from kindergarten to college who actually were able to share their stories, how excited they are about graduating and what their plans are for the future. They were willing to hear all that anyone in that audience had to say about how they can be the change that this world needed, how they could be successful in the career paths that they chose, and more importantly, how they heard them, how they see them, how they're proud of them, how they wanted to continue to inspire them, and hope that they continue on this path of greatness with their support, of course. So I encourage all the parents out there, all the educators out there, all the mentors out there to empower the minds of our youth today, allow them to speak their minds, for them to have that critical thinking, for them to be inspired by you and how you move, because that's what we're going to talk about today. I have an amazing guest here today, and he's going to share with us what he's doing to ensure that he's empowering the kids in his life. So the title of the show is Empowering Minds, Elevating Voices. And we are here with Dr. Sequoyah Wharton. He is a dynamic educator, media specialist, and passionate advocate for transforming how we teach and learn. With a career spanning both high school and higher education, Dr. Wharton has made it his mission to elevate student voices and inspire inclusive, culturally responsive learning environments where every learner can thrive. Through innovative tools like digital storytelling, visual arts, and play-based learning, he brings creativity into the classroom in ways that resonate deeply with today's students, especially those in underserved and diverse communities. His approach not only boosts academic outcomes, but fosters a sense of belonging, curiosity, and empowerment. Dr. Wharton's impact has been widely recognized. He was named the 2025 Discovery Education Educator of the Year and received the 2024 Long Island School Heroes Award from the Long Island Coalition Against Bullying. His work reflects a deep commitment to equity, global education, and preparing youth to become compassionate, informed citizens of the world. He currently serves as an educator at Brentwood High School in New York and is a media mentor with PBS Student Reporting Labs, guiding students in telling powerful stories through journalism and digital media. Dr. Wharton is also the founder of the Empowering Global Educators Foundation, an initiative that equips educators around the world with tools for impactful, inclusive teaching. His upcoming book, The Play Advantage, Global and Indigenous Perspectives on Playful Learning in Higher Education, dives into the transformative power of play in adult learning and challenges traditional academic structures. At the heart of Dr. Wharton's work is a belief that learning should be joyful, just, and deeply human. Whether he's leading in the classroom, mentoring future journalists, or writing about global education, he is lighting the path for a more creative, conscious, and connected world. So please help me welcome the amazing Dr. Wharton. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, I appreciate it.
Not a problem. So, I usually ask my guests, I want a whole history in your past, where you grew up and all. I'm not gonna ask that question. What inspired you to want to be an educator and empower our youth, and when did that moment hit you?
Well, that's a great question. Being an educator, I think, started, of course, when I was young, but not so much in the terms of becoming just a teacher.
Okay.
I think a lot of my friends gave me that kind of take the lead because I was not afraid to do that.
Okay.
Whether it was working on a project or helping people out or putting an organization to chaos.
Right.
I was able to do that. That was kind of my teaching initiative, but I started, I didn't start teaching right away
Right.
from right out of high school.
Okay.
I did work in trades. I
wow.
drove trucks. I worked with my hands, blue collar worker first.
Right.
But then as I became older and life circumstances happened, I decided that I wanted to go into teaching. So.
I love that. What type of student were you? And did you want to sort of change the curriculum or change how children were taught because of your experience as a child?
Well, as a child, I was an honor student.
Oh, great.
I did very well in school. I was part of the art club and
Wow, okay.
yeah, things like that. But at the same time, I always look back where I don't know, like what didn't I have as a child, And I think that was having a mentor or at least someone to really kind of guide me in a direction where they felt I might fit
Right.
or hoped I might fit.
Right.
And, I didn't ever have that. So maybe, I always think maybe I would have started teaching earlier in my life. Not necessarily that I had to, but maybe
Right.
I would have.
Right.
So I didn't really have a lot of guidance with that. My parents were happy that I was able to make decisions on my own and get into whatever job that I needed to get and pay my own bills. So
Right.
they were happy about that. It didn't necessarily have to be my dream job, but I was driven that way.
So you're and grew up very independent, decisive, sort of had like an understanding of how life worked with or without a mentor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I give a lot of credit to both my parents for that, especially my mother. My mother's very outspoken, so
I love that.
yeah, she gave a ton of guidance.
I love that. Well, I understand, you have a passion now for education, especially for children in underserved communities and wanting to open the world up to them. So let's talk about that a little bit. You know, how education can be more inclusive and empowering our children, especially at this time and what we're dealing with in the world. Let's talk about that. Tell me, what does truly inclusive education look like for you today?
Well, so some students that need additional help, they have what's called IEP plans, right? But in some respects, I think every student kind of needs that IEP. They need that individual education to be focused on them.
Right.
Every child wants that special attention.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to feel that they're important, right? So as a teacher, I really focus on giving my students that individual attention that they need as best as possible. And I think a lot of teachers agree with that. They try to do as much as they can when they can. I grew up very diverse. Come from a mixed ethnic background.
Right.
I was one of two kids that were ethnically diverse in my upbringing. My mother grew up same way. She grew up underserved, but she was not too dark for one group and not too light for the other.
Right.
So she grew up in the middle,
Trying to fit in and find her place, and I get it.
Both sides could kind of be mean in that respect. So I think she never wanted that for me, and I never want that for my students either.
Right.
Life is tough as it is. So
Right.
so the best thing you can do is really support your students that way.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And considering, the curriculums that they set up for the students, unfortunately, I feel they use it as a one-size-fits-all to a large degree. And it's beautiful that, they'll have educators out there like you who are interested in personalizing the experience for them and sort of role playing with them and showing them real life experiences in order for them to thrive. So let me ask you, in your experience, how can schools now better, considering what the old curriculums were and how the old structure was, how can we serve students from historically marginalized or underserved communities, especially in high stakes academic environments?
Well, schools, things start from the top down, right? Sometimes teachers are at bay of curriculum from the state or from their district.
Right.
So what a teacher really needs is support from their leadership, their administrators, and to support their diversity in the classroom. I know several educators that I work with across the globe that were all looking for that individualism to present to our students. I've had the opportunity to travel abroad many times,
Right.
and to introduce my students to cultures, I start the year off explaining where I traveled to.
Oh, wow.
And getting to explain the culture and different things I experience, So not only do they get a little motivated from the trip, they like to hear a little bit of what happened, and me trying to learn the language and, all the silly stuff that I do.
love that. So you're exposing them, even if they don't see it in their own communities, you're exposing them to different cultures around the world, and also showing them how similar we really all are, regardless of the language, regardless of the country, regardless of the color. So how, does your approach help build confidence and empower our children?
Well, as you said earlier, it's just really humanizing and personalizing it to my students.
Right.
I my students see me in the classroom, and I'm an art teacher first.
Right.
Before I'm a media teacher.
Right.
I have tattoos on my arms, and they all look at me. you know,
Oh my
and
God.
and then some of my students get to know that teaching wasn't my first profession. I worked with my hands. I did the trades.
Right.
I lived a life that maybe they're familiar with from their households.
Right.
I didn't. That I changed directions.
Right.
Complete 180 direction. And I spent time working full time and going to school full time to pursue my doctorate.
Right.
And these are things that maybe they didn't think were possible, and just humanizing that experience, and like I said, being self-deprecating and showing that I'm full of fault too is a good way to reach my students, I feel.
I love that. It's showing them that you can look like them, you can have, the same vibe, for lack of a better word as them, and it's still attainable. That they can be these professionals, that they can strive for more, they can put in the work and still do, like you said, a blue collar job, 9 to 5, and then at nighttime you're trying to build this whole other foundation of success for your life. So I think that's beautiful, that you're showing them a bit of who you are at the core, what your experiences were growing up, and how they can do it too if they just apply themselves. So that's beautiful. Well, you mentioned that you're an art teacher first. So obviously creativity, creative expression, all of that is important to you. So why is creativity essential for, engaging with the youth and allowing them to grow into who they are?
Yeah, so being an art teacher, it depends on who you're speaking to, of course.
Okay.
But some people hate art, and some people love art. Maybe a smaller minority, unfortunately, really love art. But and students of mine was, why do I need art? Why do I need art? I'm like, well, first it's a requirement. But after,
You got to do it.
But after all that,
Right.
I bring other fields into art.
Right.
I mentioned how, well, if you have an idea and you can't explain it, well, what can you do?
Right.
You could write it out. You can draw it. You can create it. And it's that thinking outside the box that my students start to understand. Even when I was younger, even though I was very good at art and I could draw and I could easily draw when I was a child,
Right.
I had no problem, like I said, explain to my kids, like, you can actually have a job being an artist.
Yes.
And an artist doesn't necessarily mean drawing, painting.
Right.
It means being creative about a
Right.
situation.
Yep.
I remember being a child, helping my father work on a car and helping him out, not knowing anything, but I was able to put things together visually.
Right.
So that was something that I always felt helpful, being an artist, quote
Right.
unquote.
Yeah, that I think was frowned upon. Even when I was growing up, it was like, even if you found the gift, because what you're teaching these kids is also to explore maybe gifts that they have within themselves that they've never tapped into. And back when I was growing up in school, and I'm not going to tell how long ago it was, but back when I was growing up, we did have art, and I love the fact that it enabled us to sort of, have these playful moments with artistic, landscapes. However, we were not told that we could make a living out of being that artistic, creative person. And if we were creative in any way, if you were a singer or a songwriter or something like that, but in terms of creative art, in terms of sketching, in terms of painting, in terms of doing any of that, we were very much told that that is not a career path that is going to render huge amounts of cash, which is what your parents want you to make. So you're always told to be a doctor, a lawyer, and all of these things. But with the way the world has progressed so quickly with technology and movies and entertainment and things like that, I'm seeing now that it's opening up a whole new world to our youth. So tell me about that. Now that you're teaching them that, and not only that it's a required course that they have to take, once they're in it, how do they feel about it?
Well, I mean, art is synonymous with creativity. So I use the words interchangeably. You know, where being an artist doesn't mean drawing, painting,
Right, right.
sculpting. It means being creative, being able to use you know, deductive reasoning, you know, being able to understand things from not just a linear perspective.
Right, right,
you
right.
know, and that goes along with what we were discussing earlier as far as like global connections, you know, looking outside the box, right?
Yes.
Looking outside your immediate community.
Yes.
And that's what that creative or artistic spark really is about. You know, I don't just teach fine arts, but I also teach media, you know, and that's something that I'm very proud of too. You know, the opportunities that my students have gotten from that. And that's synonymous with art, creativity as well.
I love
you
it.
know, being able to write, being able to put together a script, being able to plan a news package. Those are some of the things that my students either really love or, you know, or figure out parts of what they love,
Right.
how they can use it. You know, I have students that don't want to necessarily be media specialists, but they like maybe the behind the scenes where they're editing, or maybe they like creating a music score. So there's different parts that make people work together.
Right.
You know, no matter how much you want to work alone in school, you still have to be able to work with others.
We work with a team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So your approach then academically, how does that teach them socially? You know, how they can live, how they can build a future, how they can think, you know what I mean? And especially when, you know, we're a world where we're telling them, as I mentioned earlier, what to do instead of showing them how to do it. How is that helping, you know, with this type of approach that you're using?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. So you know, I just like how we're here, sitting here. You know, what I'm already thinking is, how can I bring you into my classroom and have you speak to my students?
Right.
You know, because you know, there's only so much they're going to learn from me,
Right.
right? And there's going to be a different perspective from your lips to theirs.
Right, right.
And that is something that I love bringing to the classroom and showing that not everybody has everything, all knowing knowledge.
Right.
Google doesn't know it all.
No, it doesn't.
You know, ChatGPT doesn't know it all.
Yep.
You know, so you actually have to be in that moment to learn. We all, you know, our memory is formed by emotional response,
Yes.
right? So if we don't feel an emotional response looking at a TV screen or whatever, you're not going to remember it.
Right.
So that's why I really explain making those types of connections.
I love that. I love that. Well, then, in a world driven by data and standardized testing, which we mentioned, how do we protect that space for creative thinking and expression in education?
So schools do need a metric to base some things off of, to grow and expand.
Right.
But there needs to be forward thinkers leading education or supporting education that allow for that creative space to not escape.
Right.
You know, I think when I mentioned again where, you know, AI kind of, you know, blew down the doors where like, oh
Yes.
man, we got to cut this out, you
Yeah.
know, oh, we can't do this and that. But I think it's not maybe the best approach where, you know, it adds another creative space because not everybody
does.
wants to be tied to what something else wrote for you.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
and you want to be able to expand upon that.
Yes.
You know, so it's just another moment for creative thought, and I think that has to be put out there for people to understand. You know, and that's where the kind of creative space lies. You know, really forward thinkers or even people who, like I said, just support different forms of thinking.
Right. Well, I know that you were you know, after going through his extensive bio and expertise through the years, I know that you have been one of the first pioneers to sort of bring this to the forefront. Are you seeing now that, you know, more people are wanting to fall in line with this way of teaching and engaging our children instead of the standardized, regimented way that we grew up learning and being in school?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm writing a book with authors from around the world,
Yes.
you know, and educators from around the world. And they want to bring, I mean, the book I'm working on, The Play Advantage, it's tying global and indigenous perspectives into the classroom of playfulness, you know, and how that can be in higher education. And, you know, shying away from maybe westernized thoughts of putting it into the classroom,
Right.
and showing that oral traditions really kind of work very well
Yes.
for our understanding. So these types of games and this way of thinking is really important.
Well, what does that look like? What is the role playing? What is the storytelling? Like, what does that look like in real life for
Well-
people watching?
Well, I mean, you know, when you're a kid, when you first learn how to ride a bike, what happens? You know, either A, your parents or your guardian puts training wheels on, and then you pedal down the road, right?
With them holding on to the back.
Right? Yeah, or like my father did. He's like, training wheels.
No way! Just get on that
Just
bike,
get on
boy.
that bike.
Yeah.
We got this, you know? And, you know, it's learning by doing.
Right,
Right?
right.
And not being afraid to fall off that bike and get back
Yeah,
up, right?
yeah.
I mean, you know, it's cliche, but it's true.
Right.
And bringing that into the classroom is important, because how else are you going to remember it?
Yeah.
Once again, that emotional connection, if you don't have it, you're not going to remember it.
Right.
I am not a lecturer. You will not find me in my classroom for more than 10 minutes trying to give that instruction. I am giving directions.
Right.
I am giving a goal,
Right.
but I'm not telling you how to achieve that goal.
Right.
You know, and you know, if there's failure, well, there's other ways to do it, right? And you're going
Yes.
to learn from this.
Exactly.
You know, my students don't fail from failure to finish a project.
Right.
They fail from not
Doing it at all. Right.
You know, so there's a big difference in that, you know, where they're like, wow, I didn't fail the quarter. I'm like, no, I'm like, you were trying the whole time,
Yeah.
but I didn't finish this.
Yeah.
But you were trying the whole time, day in, day out.
Oh, wow.
You know? So I think that is empowering too, and where they know that their teacher supports them, you know, failing, you know, like, and not failing, but just not achieving the goal
Right.
if they were trying.
Right, right,
So
right.
I think that adds a different dynamic, you know, where necessarily a standardized test, it really is cut and dry, where
Yes, it
it's like
is.
either you fail it or you pass it.
Yep. You either know it or you don't.
Right. And I honestly don't think there's anything wrong with studying towards a test. Some tests definitely need some adjustment. But, you know, those you know, like summative tests that you take in classes is important to some extent, you know, but there's more than that, obviously.
Well, because, you know, sooner or later we realize we've been duped anyway, because a lot of the stuff that we learn in the school, we don't even use it in real life to a certain degree. So
To some degree.
I'm just saying.
Even though algebra I did use the other day.
Did you?
And I did remember a very small part of it,
Right,
which was
right.
amazing.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Well, how about trigonometry and geometry? Are you seeing that come up anyway in your...
Well, you know, so when I finished my doctorate, I had to do statistics.
Right.
And, you know, we do statistics every day in the school to figure out where students should be or can be, or how we can improve communication with our parents.
Right.
So these are some things that are important. So to some degree you do, you know.
Yeah, all right.
You know.
I see. So basically it's about, you know, teaching but not lecturing. You try to make the experience of learning fun, it seems. How important is that? Because, you know, to a lot of kids it's humdrum, it's a drain, it's a drag, it's all of these words. But how do you make it fun? How do you make it something that they want to do versus that they have to do it?
Well, I think I have a bit of an advantage to some degree because, you know, my students don't have to take a test at the end. There is an art regents, but they don't have to take it.
Okay.
So there's a little, you know, kind of like they don't have to feel that immediate pressure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, some students need that to actually do the class.
Right.
So it's a real tightrope that I walk with that. But at the same point, you know, I in high school, I try to make students responsible.
Right.
And that's a challenge.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right.
because they're still in childhood, but some of them are maybe 12th graders and they're trying to escape childhood, right?
Yeah,
So they
yeah.
think they know it all.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, you know, in the beginning of the year, I really, like I said, I set goals and I allow them to meet it at their own pace.
Right.
You know, and like I said, some students don't, but at the same time, you also, like I said, you get to work in a group, you know, and you learn strengths and weaknesses of people and how you got to support them, you know. So I don't know. I just, that's just how I kind of go. I show them things I'm working on, even outside of class, so they see that, you know, you walking stressed, I'm stressed too.
No, no.
I'm stressed too. I got this going on too. You know?
Exactly. We are no different. I
Yeah.
love that. And for the fact that you work, you know, with kids in underserved communities and just the pressure that they have at home and you know the things that they may not have that they see other kids having and the fact that they feel that they may not be as smart as maybe other students in the class. How do you kind of, you know, deal with that and keep them uplifted and encouraged even in those moments that they feel like they're just not good enough?
Well, I mean, that goes back to that individual attention that we were discussing earlier. You know, whether it's pulling a student to the side or, you know, cracking a joke with them real quick or, you know, saying like, I don't know, if it was a video that their group was making, I'd be like, I saw that video, you know, I don't know what that was, you know, and you know, just, you know, just having an easy conversation with them.
Right.
Or even discussing parts of my life I might want to discuss with them and kind of taking, you know, showing that, you know, we're all that human, you know,
Right.
we're all dealing with some experiences that
Yes.
might bring us down, you know.
Yeah.
You know, my students know if they walk into my classroom, they don't acknowledge me by a fist bump or something, you know,
There's
there's
a
something
problem,
wrong.
yeah.
And it's funny, I mean, as the year goes on, if a student's talking to me at my desk and someone walks in, I'm hi, you know, or the other student that was talking to me will say, wow, they just walked past you, they ghosted you, you know,
Wow.
and they know that I want that acknowledgement.
Yes, yes.
And because I'm going to give it to you,
Yeah.
you know, my classroom is that safe space for them, you know.
You just sound like a cool teacher, Dr. Wharton. You really, really do. And I think that's what it is. We're used to seeing these teachers with a ruler, with the spectacles on, they got a frown on their face. I'm just here to do the job. I don't care how you feel. I don't care what you're thinking. You're going to pay attention to this lesson plan. And you are just making sure, again, like I said in the beginning, that our kids are seen and heard. And I think that is so important. And I have to commend you for doing that because I know that they are grateful for that. It's no longer a task or a chore, you know, it is a pleasure to be in your class, to learn, to see what's next, to hear your next story, you know, about where you traveled and who you spoke to. So I want to go back to that real quick. How teachers are shaping global citizens through cultural responsive learning. What does it mean to be a global citizen today, in today's world, like right now? And how can educators help the students beyond borders? Because I know that you're doing it. Should other teachers be doing it? This could be your own personal, you know, goal, but should this be a thing?
Well, you know, it's a very loaded question.
Okay.
There's a lot of parts to unfold to answer that. You know.
We got time.
Yeah. Well, you know, being a global citizen is important. I mean, our world has been opened up through social media, right?
Yes.
But that world opened through social media is clouded by a lot of opinion.
Right.
So that still brings us back to basics where actually traveling to those various places around the world really means something.
Yeah.
that's why a couple of years back I thought of creating a nonprofit, Empowering Global Educators Foundation, and through that, it's not there yet, but but through that foundation, we're looking to bring educators, create scholarships for students,
Okay.
and bring them elsewhere in the world and learn from these experiences in
Yes.
global classrooms, right?
Yes.
How are they working in Costa Rica? How are they working in Asia? How are they working in New Zealand? Wherever,
Right.
you know, and bringing that back, and that knowledge is important because
Yes.
we all get along different. We all work differently.
Yes.
There are a lot of similarities too, but taking that knowledge and bringing it back to your classroom is important. You know, many of my students are from South America, but different parts, or Central America, different parts. There's
Right.
all different types of Latino students involved, you know, but they don't know, you know, maybe one student's from Colombia and another student's from Ecuador, but do they know about each other's cultures? And
Right,
they
right.
might not.
Yeah.
You know, so these are some of the things that you really need to think of. But how are your students going to think about it? Is if the educator knows about it, right?
Yes.
And that goes up too, right? As
Yeah.
long as your administrators know about it, as long as the state knows about it, right? So, like I said, very loaded question.
I know.
Do
I
I- do-
know.
do
we
I-
ask the hard questions here
yeah.
on your unit act.
You know,
Well, let me just ask you this then. In terms, because what it feels like to me, and I'm putting it in a very simplistic way, but it makes me believe that it'll help bridge the gap,
Yeah.
you know, between the cultural divide that we have right now. Like it'll expose our children to have a deeper empathy for other cultures, for them to see that they're more attainable than we allow them to believe, you know, and that your next door neighbor could actually be one of these people that, you know, you're lived next to all of these years but never knew anything about, and then realize that you have so much in common, you know? So speak to me about that. Like, considering the political divide right now, the cultural diverse issues that we have going on right now, you know, what do you think the foundation of being this global citizen, this global educator can kind of lay for our children?
well, like my classroom, it really works with building community. I mean, that's kind of the main crux of it, getting to
Yeah.
know each other.
Yeah.
You know, you might have this thought of somebody, you know, by their physical appearance, but then once you start getting to know them, it all changes.
It all
right?
changes.
It all changes.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I walked in my classroom and my students see me with tattoos, and they think something one way until they get to know me, right?
get to know
You know, a lot of my students in the beginning of the year say, Mr., 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 and I say, it's Doctor, 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 you know, you know.
Get it right.
Yeah, you know,
man.
but you know, at that age, you don't know the difference.
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
you don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
the
No, I
difference.
get
I
it.
didn't know the difference,
Right,
you know.
right. But you earned it.
Yeah,
so.
you know, and it's you know, it's that, you know, it's people not maybe taking things so offensively if someone doesn't know you. Also, you know, emotions can get out of control when you're not listening.
Right,
You
right,
know?
right.
So everybody kind of needs, not that I'm giving advice to everybody, but, you know, I think people in general just need to really try to accept people, as long as they're not trying to hurt you,
Yeah.
accept people for their differences.
Yep. For who they are, what they have to offer, because you don't know who these people can possibly be in this world. So I love that. Well, I know that you work with PBS. You have a PBS student reporting lab. Tell us a little about that and how it has influenced your students to think and to work and to thrive educationally.
So the work I've been able to do with PBS Student Reporting Labs has been instrumental in my students' lives. I was very fortunate to be able to reach out to them, going on 9 years now.
Oh, wow.
And I reached out to them because I had a task from where I work that they wanted the program to grow.
Right.
They wanted the media program to grow,
Okay.
digital film broadcast.
Right.
So with that, I said, oh wow, I said, how am I going to make this happen?
Wow.
So, I spent time doing my research, and then I thought of PBS. I knew that actually a relative of mine was on the board, Edward Mapp. My mother had told me about this. So I'm like, let me reach out PBS, you know.
Right.
And Student Reporting Labs had popped up on the internet. I reached out to them, got an email back within a half hour.
Wow.
So very quickly, this is interesting. Long story short, they donated a camera to me and my students for my classroom,
Oh my
and
God.
sent some T-shirts and Zoom calls and reached out to my students, and it's been great ever since.
I love it. So wait, a lot of educators didn't have that opportunity if they just reach out to. They have, I guess, a curriculum or something set up to help schools.
Well, they do. They
Okay.
have. It's been growing for quite some time now. But they do have teacher workshops for teachers. I go there to help out as well.
Oh my
I'll be
God.
down there, at the end of July. So they're amazing. They really support students from their end, like better than anybody I know. They really have been so supportive. My students have had opportunities to speak to the president, to speak to Secretary of Education. All these amazing opportunities through their voice, and that's what it is, though, giving students voice,
Right,
so they can be heard, and this is on a national level. So I'm also part of WNET, which is the tri-state area.
Okay.
I'm the vice chair for their ETSC committee, which is their Educational Telecommunications Service Committee.
Okay.
Where several people from New York get to come together and really try to advocate for our students.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the benefits are amazing. Tell me a little about the kids. How do they feel about the opportunity that you've afforded them, and what they're actually gaining from it, and how they can use it for their future?
So they've had opportunities to go on these week-long fellowships to various parts of the country, and all paid for them. They went to ASU one year. They went to Boston. And to learn about how to report, how to film,
Right.
rule of thirds, capturing good sound bites. Hopefully I got a few good sound bites you caught. So these are some of the things that they learn how to do.
Okay.
And it helps me out in the classroom, because they've come back and oh my God, Dr. Wharton, you were telling us that. I'm like,
Yeah,
I know. Many times I've been telling you that, Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, you should. Oh, yes, I told you all that.
Wow.
Capturing B-roll, getting your wide, medium, tight shots,
Well, speaking of that, I mean, did you always have an affinity for media, entertainment, artistic expression in this way, or how did you connect that once you became an educator?
When you need a job, you do it.
You
figure
do
it
it?
out.
Okay,
You
okay.
figure it
You
out.
saw where the pendulum
Yeah.
was facing once you were in school,
Yeah.
becoming a doctor.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
But it's just being that creative.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So you just figure it out. I've been very fortunate to be able to figure out technology and assist people with it too.
So it was learn as you go, and then
Yeah.
you're just pouring that information back into them.
Yeah, and also, it's doing the research and
Yeah.
looking for it and spending the time to do it. It's not something that you're just going to gain by hoping the best.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really doing the details and behind the scenes work.
Well, tell me, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about what you do? How are you contributing? What you've learned? What is your most proudest moment?
Well, it's all about the students. That's all we focus on, and high school is different than college, because high school, you hold your student's hand as long as you can.
Right. Right.
And you're calling home, and you're trying to communicate with family members, and you're reaching out, or you're talking to fellow teachers that, is that, do they need this, or,
Right.
whatever. You know, so you're holding that student's hand. And it's funny though, by the end of the year, you've built up that rapport with your students, and then it's like,
Yep.
all right, see you later. And you're like, oh man, you know. And then like my class, they take for a college credit too, so they can also maybe come back into the classroom and take it, which is good. Maybe I'll have a student 2 years in a row, which is
Right.
even better, you know.
Wow.
But I teach college too, so I've had students in college or in my high school classroom, and I've taught them in college as well.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they get to hold on to you a little longer, and as they grow, obviously you're
Yeah, and I
growing
think
with them.
I think that transition is kind of comforting too, because I've taught first year students in college, and for them to actually know a professor, and it's almost like I'm not holding their hand as much as I did in high school.
Right.
But at least they have some sort of comfortability, you know.
it, I love it.
So that's important.
I love it. So I hear that you're writing a book. It is The Play Advantage, Global and Indigenous Perspectives on Playful Learning in Higher Education. Unfortunately, I do not have a copy of the book, but tell us a little about it, when we can expect it, and yeah, what inspired you to even write it?
So book's still being worked on. You
Okay.
know, so I work with a co-editor. He's part-time in Spain and part-time in London. And I met him through a connection that I had made many years ago when I studied abroad.
Okay.
And I still have connections abroad, which has been the best part.
Yeah.
It's those global connections, right?
that's right.
And so there was another editor at the time, and I was just going to be a contributing author. And that editor had other things to do, I guess. And I was asked if I could be an editor. So I said, sure, I could do it. So I took on this venture. We have 24 authors from around the world contributing, and speaking of indigenous play in higher education.
Okay.
So it could be from Africa. I have an author from Africa, from Cameroon. I have another author from New Zealand. Like I said, it's Spain and South America, all over the place. And it's just a really beautiful combination of cultures coming together to educate our students.
I love that.
You
So
know?
it's a compilation of what their stories, or is it actual?
So it's almost like a tool book almost.
Okay.
So it's going to be part story,
Okay.
and also part usefulness in the classroom. How
Okay.
how can educators or practitioners use this teaching method in their classrooms?
Okay.
So there's actually going to be almost like a toolkit
Okay.
that people can use to bring it into their classroom.
I love that.
And of course, you know, if someone's teaching science, they can work with the modes that they learn within that book.
Okay, all right. I love that. I believe so. It's coming out soon. You know, we'll share the information on where you can follow him, and definitely know when it's going to drop. But I think that's amazing. I think that's really amazing. And again, people from all over the world are contributing to this book, and it's for everyone. It's no specific group, academic
Nope.
dreams or desires. Everyone can read this book and still gain something from it. I love that. I love that. Okay. Well, I mean, in terms of empowering young minds and elevating voices, tell me, what can we do? We as a whole, we the parents, we the mentors, we the educators, what can we do to ensure that, you know, we're encouraging, keeping our kids engaged, wanting them to desire more than what they may see in front of them from the world, and just elevate their voices, let them know that they are seen and heard right now, from your perspective?
Well, you know, advice that I have is not giving advice right away.
Okay.
The first step is listening,
Okay.
because I think as adults we want to give all the knowledge we've attained right away. You could do this, you could do that, and I think that sometimes is a deterrent.
Yeah.
You know, I think that not just children, anybody, is the first step is listening.
Yes.
I pride myself on being a listener first, and then giving advice later.
That's me.
Yeah, I'll be the one in the room sitting there silent.
Right.
And it's not because I don't want to say anything.
Right.
It's because I want to hear everybody. I want to hear everything going on.
Right.
So when you have that individual attention with your students, to listen first.
Right.
And don't give an answer right away.
Right.
Because your first answer might not be the same if you give it a few days to think about it. And I think that is a part that I think has escaped us with everything being so instantaneous.
Yes.
With the internet, with social media, everything's quick.
Right. Right.
And I think, and I'm learning this. This is not me saying I do this all the time.
Right.
But this is something I've learned getting older.
Right.
And pausing, because I'm very quick. I don't know if you see my emails; they're quick.
Yes, they are.
But some things can be quick. Some things
Right.
should be quick. But when you're listening, you need to take time to think about it to help our students. And that might be some advice that I give students too, to listen to others.
Right.
When you're a kid, I don't know how you were, but I knew everything. I knew everything. You don't know.
No, nothing.
You
Yeah,
don't,
that's right. And you can't tell me nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a combative kid,
Right.
I mean, but at the same time, I still thought I knew more than I did.
Right.
But as you get older, you realize you don't know anything.
Yep. Yep.
But you just know your own experience.
Exactly.
Everyone's experience is individual, right?
Right.
Your advice to a student might work better than my advice. Who knows,
Right.
But it's funny, I was reading an article the other day about these experiences that you have will stick with you forever, even if you don't remember them.
Yeah.
And how they influence your movements in life.
Right.
So take every experience and learn from it, whether it's conscious or subconscious,
Right. All right. I love that. So basically, for us parents and educators and mentors out there, it's to pause. Let the child speak. Allow them to express themselves, create that safe space without judgment for them to be able to share, and then you make an informed decision upon the data that you receive, so to speak. And I love that, because we are quick to react, because even as parents, educators, and mentors, we think that we already know the answer. And there's not a one-size-fits-all for every single kid.
Nope.
Each individual requires the respect of the decisions or the advice to be tailored towards them. So I love that you said that. That is amazing. So we're about to wind down here. I want to give you some time to share something on your heart. What do you want to share with the Your Our Unity viewers and all those that are watching on behalf of who you are?
Well, you just gotta, like we discussed, make those global connections. Reach out. That's the most important part. Like I said, we're all individuals. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, and take that time to listen to others.
Yeah, take that time to listen to others. I really think that's so important. I want to ask you real quick, considering, technology and where it is today and how most of our kids are learning and even socializing, do you find that is a detriment to them, not being to be as expressive as they possibly could, sort of allowing the noise of the internet to sort of intercede opposed to a calm, clear voice like yourself? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, once again, that's individual too, because people react differently to the information that they're receiving.
Right.
There's students in my classroom that can't look away from the phone in their hands, right? But there's other students that can.
Okay.
There are students who put that away, and they will. They'll put it away for the whole period.
Wow.
So it's individual, and everybody has, once again, their strengths and their weaknesses. Some kids, the phone is a pacifier.
Right.
And that's actually not bad to some degree. Maybe it's not distracting them, but if they know they have the power to look down at the phone for 2 seconds and to be able to look at it, it's not necessarily bad, because you know what? They're not disrupting the other students in the classroom.
Right.
And maybe they need that mental break. You know what? 45 minutes is a long time for a kid in the classroom.
It is.
And sometimes that quick little mental break can be okay. But there's the flip side, right? There's
Yes.
kids that can't control it for
Yep.
more than 5 minutes,
Thank
right?
you.
So it's so individual, but unfortunately, the world we live in, you have to broad stroke certain things for people to feel equity, right?
Right.
So it's a tough decision to make,
Right.
you know. If everybody had money, you know, would they teach their kid privately? Maybe. Who knows, right?
knows, yeah.
You know, it's a tough thing to discuss too. There's so many ways to answer that.
Right, right. Well, I know that you won an award real quick. It was about bullying. What was the award? Brentwood, I can't find it. But do you speak on that, teach about that? Because I feel like to a large degree these kids on social media, they experience a lot of that, you know, the bullying and the taunting and the things like that from what they post. And how do you feel about that and that culture?
Yeah, well, you know, there's definitely bullies out there. You know, even as adults, we get bullied by people, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, I like to mention that to kids too. You know, people are going to be bullies, but it's going to make you stronger for you to not react in such a horrible way to that.
Yeah.
And maybe that person's a bully because they're trying to reach out for help.
Yep, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe being that strong person and realizing, hey, you know, I know you're bullying me, but, you know, is there something bothering you? Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
And giving the tools for a kid to be able to talk themselves through that.
Right.
Because if they're hurt by that bully, it's going to affect them for life.
Yep,
you
you're
know?
absolutely right.
So being able to learn how to react to certain situations is important.
It's important. I get it. I'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Sequoyah Wharton, for being here, sharing your journey, how important it is to uplift and empower our children. I want to put up your information. You guys can reach out to him there at Beyond the Basics Educations, right? LLC. I have your email. As I said, I can't see a thing from where I am, but all the information is there. I need all of you guys to please reach out to him, learn how we can help our children in any way we can, use their voice, empower their minds, and to live out their dreams, basically. I think that's really what you're doing. It's like you're showing these kids a better way for them to see the world, and I think that is admirable. I so appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're gonna get real quick to the Dare to Be You. And it is, dare to be the spark that lights the path for the next generation. Dare to be the one who listens, who uplifts, who believes in the voices often unheard. Dare to see our youth not just as future leaders, but as leaders right now. When we empower young minds and create space for them to speak their truth, we don't just shape students, we shape a better world. So dare to be you and let your light give them the permission to shine. And that is exactly what Dr. Wharton has shared with us today. Let's be that light in our children's lives to allow them to shine in their moment. I want you guys to please thank my guest again for being here. I want you guys to have a fabulous evening. Please remember that peace and love is in the palm of our hands. So let's go out there and be some love, share some love, and just walk in love. Thank you again, Dr. Wharton, for being here. We will see you in 2 weeks here on the You Are Unity Show. I love you, and I want you to have a great night. Thank you again. Bye.